What is up, everybody? I am here today with Markus Wierschem, and today we are talking about his book, Cormac McCarthy, An American Apocalypse, where he combines the works of Rene Girard with Cormac McCarthy. And let me just say outright here, I'm going to come on the record right now. This is the best book in Cormac McCarthy studies of the last decade. You know, there are a couple other books like Diane C. Lucy, and that's, I feel like, a combination of biographical and secondary source, secondary interpretation. But I would say American Apocalypse is the best, just straight up secondary source I've read on Cormac McCarthy in a long time. And it was written by none other than Markus over here on the other end. Broadcasting live from Germany. How are you doing today, Markus?
Hey, Ian. Thanks for having me, and you do me way too much praise. So I wouldn't dare compare myself to the great Diane Luce, um, who I had the pleasure of meeting in 2016, along with some others. And yeah, me and some other scholars. I'm super happy that you like the book, but I would never. Yeah, I did what I could. I did what I could, and I tried to do it well. So thank you
Yeah,
very
what? And I didn't know about this. So suddenly I was getting all these comments. Like, I'd make a video on Blood Meridian or the Orchard Keeper, and I'd get these comments that are like, and maybe this was you, maybe this would be a great marketing technique. They're like, you don't know shit. You know, have you read Markus Wierschem's book yet? You know, he did 100 pages on the Orchard Keeper. He did 100 pages on Blood Meridian. This is a bunch of crap. And I'd be like, what? Who is this? And then suddenly I read the book and I was like, oh yeah, they're right. You know, he's got it going on. Okay, this is good. So, you know, if you have a book out there on Cormac McCarthy or someone else and you do that, then you're going to get me interested. You know, my ego is going to be like, wait, am I really not? Who is this
check
guy?
out whether this guy really like I'm sure he doesn't have anything to say. It's like no, that wasn't me, but whoever it was, thank you for getting this guy's interest. So I'm happy to be here, and it seems to be doing well. I just wrote it many years ago because it's been finished forever, technically speaking, and I have forgotten most of the stuff that I've written about. But apparently the guy who wrote it was smart in some way, or at least said some smart things. It's not the same thing. So
Yeah, yeah, 100%. So let me just ask you. So a lot of this is combining Rene Girard, mimetic theory, mimesis with Cormac McCarthy's works. Were you deeply into Girardian theory before Cormac McCarthy, before all this, or did you just kind of lightly know about it and saw an opportunity to combine it all? Like, wow, Cormac really does exemplify all this.
mhm. So I think my interest in McCarthy started around 2007, 2008 when I was in St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. And we had this wonderful teacher called Jeff Hamilton, Canadian, Canadian fellow. And we read Child of God in this course on contemporary Gothic fiction. And that was, for me, was like, oh, love at first sight. I know you don't think very highly of Child of God, but or not as highly as some of the others, which is wrong but debatable. Um, but so that's where my interest in McCarthy started, and I think researching Child of God, I came across this essay by Gary Schuba, I think, and he applied mimetic theory to Child of God, and so that seemed rather interesting to me. And then it popped up again and again, more like a side note in writings of Rick Wallach, though there it took a bit of a bigger role. But Rick Wallach wrote about it, and um, I think Barclay Owens, when he wrote about the Western novels, he spoke about a Girardian firestorm of violence, and I was like, okay, that seems to be a fairly interesting theory. So I should get more into it. So I got into it big time. I was a participant in some Girardian. The club is the club. It's called Cover. So it's like the colloquium on violence and religion. Yeah. So I went to a couple of those, and I got more and more deeply into it. And it's really reading Girard really started clicking to me, and it was like, oh, this is a fairly simple theory that builds in complexity but remains fairly observable and you can understand it. and it was cool. So yeah, I read a lot of Girard. I read a lot of McCarthy scholarship, and then I read more on general myth theory, and yeah, and I was already familiar with entropy because my old teacher, great guy called Professor. He's a professor, but he's not with us anymore. But his name is Peter Frese, and he was like this Bloomian figure in American studies in Germany. Yeah, so he was almost like Harold Bloom in some ways, and yeah, and through him he wrote a big book on entropy, and it was like, oh, all of this seems kind of similar. All of these there seems to be structures that you can combine, and I'm always looking for things that I can combine together because it's like when it's just one thing, it's a bit boring to me or it seems reductive. So I try to craft this theoretical foundation basically to allow me to talk about anything that interested me. I'm sorry, I should stop at some point, and you can just say stop. Um,
It's all good, man. No, I do this every time I go on someone else's show. Like last time I went on someone's show, my buddy was like, "Did you know? Did he tell you that you could rant for 30 minutes for every question, or did you just do it?" And I said, "I just did it. I just made it happen, man. I have an answer, okay, well, let me just commend you on something. Speaking of child of God, I use your terminology all the time. You called it Gothic psycho mythology. You have like all these little buzzword terms in there, which I guess we'll get to in a little bit. But for everyone who doesn't know about Rene Girard and about your application of Girardian theory, can you just kind of give an overview of a mimetic theory, mimesis, and all of that? A
okay.
lot of people don't know about him, which is crazy, but yeah.
Yeah, he's one of those French theorists that seem not quite on the level of, I don't know, if you're talking about Foucault or Derrida or um, Baudrillard and some of these people. So, but I think Girard is very clear, and you can apply him very very nicely in some ways. Okay, so yeah, so mimetic theory. Oh boy, let's try to give a brief summary. So Girard starts with the first book is Deceit, Desire, and a Novel. I think, yeah, I did prepare a little bit, so I got it here. And there he writes, or he first discovers this principle of mimetic desire. A mimetic desire basically means that we learn what we desire, not originally from ourselves. There's hunger, there's thirst, there's you want shelter, you want one place to go, but that's about it. And the rest of our desires, in some ways, are acquired. You could say he talks about acquisitive mimesis from other people. So he says we learn what to desire by watching somebody else, and those people that we imitate, or the desires of whom we imitate, that they're called our models, basically. And this is all fine and good, so long as we can easily get what we want to, what we aspire to, what we want to acquire. But it becomes more difficult when there's a limited number of those goods. And this can be goods, this can be a job position that you apply for, and you're starting to clash with other people. This can be the same woman or the same person that you're in love with, yeah, the same beloved. And if you can't both enjoy it, and this is the Hobbesian principle, so Thomas Hobbes already talks about it, when two people want the same thing and which they cannot both enjoy, they become enemies. And so we start to imitate our models. We become more like our models in the same way. And when our desires clash around the same object, and he talks about triangular desire. So we have a triangle. See, this is a triangle I'm making. So we have the disciple. That's me when I'm imitating somebody. We have the model, and we have the object. And the desirability of the object is really something that the model signals to us. And then at some point, sometimes when we acquire the object, we overcome our model, who has become our rival. And if we win, then suddenly we discover, oh, the object wasn't all that great to begin with. What we were really interested in was the model, um, our rival model, who was the obstacle in our way too. So, but yeah, for him, for
And to
Girard,
hop in, and no, let me hop in really fast because what you say in your book, I reread your first section on this, is really good. You're talking about, okay, so we have this rivalry. So let's say you and I maybe I have a mimetic desire. Let's say I want to have a book on that's great on Cormac McCarthy or whatever. Then this rivalry ensues. But what I don't want is, the book on Cormac McCarthy. What I want is your state of being, right? Like I actually want you, right? If I remember correctly.
yeah, I mean, he calls it metaphysical desire. So there's like a metaphysical quality to our models in the sense they seem to inspire this fullness of being. Yeah, when you really admire somebody, like a star, or you look at advertisements, and there's always like, oh, buy this new car, another topic of interest. Buy this new car, and then there's like this supermodel, or like Brad Pitt or somebody else, yeah, peddling this car to you. And what you're really looking for is the divine status, or the quasi-divine status, the metaphysical fullness of Brad Pitt, or that angelic model that you want to acquire in some way. So that the qualities are transferred. And yeah, that's so in some way he says also we want to cannibalize our models, we want to incorporate them, and then, but once we acquire the object, then suddenly we realize, oh, it doesn't make my life all that much more meaningful, that much more full, and I'm still the same person that I was before, but I had a bunch of conflict along the way, probably.
Sorry, you can continue too with your explanation. I just wanted to bring that up.
All right. So, I mean, I'm doing a very crude job of this, but that's for him, that's the origin of human conflict. And when you have, on the other hand, you have theories of violence, an aggressive drive. Where does that come from? Freud speaks of the death drive. It's something metaphysical that's kind of in you, yeah, and that's why we're aggressive and violent. There are some other theories, of course. For Girard, it's really like this very minimal opposition. Okay, you clash around the same desires that you have acquired from somebody else to begin with, and that's how conflict, violence, and so on emerge. So that's the first step. Second step is then we imitate each other all the time. I'm a super mimetic person. Yeah, so I was thinking, no, I should just sit like Cormac McCarthy in the Oprah interview because I want Cormac McCarthy's metaphysical fullness in some ways, and the artistic genius or something. But yeah, or you try to imitate somebody, but basically that means that you can become, everybody can imitate in principle everybody else, and we have various modes of mediation. Yeah, in some cases, for instance, in Don Quixote, in Miguel Cervantes, you have the Don Quixote's model is Amadis de Gaul, like this fictional knight, and who embodies all these ideals of knighthood. So he wants to be like Amadis, and he models himself like that. And there's not a real issue there because he can do that. There's no real danger of meeting Amadis de Gaul because he's fictional, but that. That's externalized, or external mediation of desire. But when we can meet each other, and he talks about distance, when the distance between model and disciple becomes too small, like you can actually clash. And so that's something. So everybody in democracy, for instance, yeah, that's Alexis de Tocqueville. He talks about like, okay, we have abandoned all the principles of the elites. Yeah, we have abandoned most of that, but we have done away with the privileges of some. But now everybody else is on a level playing field in a way, and so now everybody can clash with everybody else, and everybody's an obstacle to everybody else, and this can happen. So yeah, another example is for instance with Freud and the father. Yeah, you have the primal father, and the sons compete with him for the favor of the women. Yeah, and for Girard, it would say, so Freud would say, yeah, and later on we kill the father, and then we feel bad about it, and we build this totem to him, and the dead father, becomes like the origin of religion and social rules and prohibitions and so on. Yeah. But then but for Girard, it would simply be, no, that's just another model. It's an important model because it's the father. It's one of the first models you have, but it's not because it's the father, but it's because one of the first models you have. Okay, so everybody becomes the enemy of everybody else, at least potentially. You can imitate everybody else, and that can lead to this breakdown of social rules, social structures, and really, yeah, where that comes from. For Girard, those social structures, as for Freud, they come from this idea of a primal murder and a scapegoat. That's the second step. I think I should try to make that more clear. Let me grab a bit of water.
Yeah, no worries.
So, yeah. So you have this, as I said, you have this primal murder thesis with Freud, and Girard very much takes this from Freud. He says, okay, so we have this first kind of primal victim in the horde of the primal Darwinian horde, who have competed with each other, and then at some point we take a step back from the murdered victim, from the corpse. And whereas before everybody clashed with everybody else in some way, and now we find, oh, there's a certain calmness suddenly. We have, like, our violence has expanded itself in this one victim. So this one victim, then later on, it has to be guilty of the crisis. Yeah, it's like, oh, if that one victim that one person that we killed or that we expelled, suddenly now we find that after we've done that, we're calm and at peace. So, that person must have been really guilty of the crisis that we were in, and B, that means we can repeat this whole process. We can reiterate it, and that becomes the basis of ritual sacrifice, at least for Girard. And the one is ritual sacrifice, the other is prohibitions. So things that lead to this clash of desires, they become forbidden, taboo, as in Freud's totem. Okay. I'm sorry, I'm really talking in Europe and I'm not very structured, but I'm trying to.
No, you're doing good. I'm following.
So for him, and as for Freud, that's the same basic idea. But for Freud, it's because it's the father, the primal father, and for Girard, it's this double function of the victim. And that victim, later on, we talk about the scapegoat. That scapegoat victim really isn't all that special, but we think he's special, because, well, after all, we're now at peace, right? So he has to have been really guilty of what we accused him of. Yeah, and he becomes both vilified and deified. This idea that the gods later on, or creation itself, comes in a sense from the body of the victim. When you look at world mythologies, that's that other part. Yeah. So I wanted to talk about myth, and you have this idea. Oh, myths around the world, at least creation myths, they are eerily similar quite often. And quite often it's like some god or some person, some giant, either is slain, and then his body becomes the world in some sense, or they sacrifice themselves for the common good in some way. And that becomes a part of the cosmos. Like, I think there's this Aztec myth from Teotihuacan, and they decide, oh, two gods have to become the sun and the moon, and so they have to sacrifice themselves first in the fire. And the one has to go first, who's this really pretty god, and he doesn't really want to go. So the other one who's this pustule-ridden, disgusting, disease-ridden god, and he has to jump into the fire first, and he does that. And then the other one is shamed into imitating that, and they become sun and moon, in a sense. And yeah, you always have that sense, oh, maybe something happened at the origin of culture, and that something may have been a murder. Certainly a very McCarthyan idea as well. Yeah, so that's the second step in the theory. I can go on. Then this is something that becomes then he calls that the scapegoat mechanism. So the idea is when we have too much crisis, too much clashing of desires around the same objects, then we have to find some guilty party. Yeah. So sometimes rule of law starts to lose its value. People start disregarding the law that societies has established, and institutions cease to function as they usually should. Something that we can I think observe in the world right now in some countries in the West rather well. And then where was I? Yeah. Uh, so the society is in this stage of crisis, disintegration. So what we need, somebody we can blame, and this usually isn't somebody very rich. No, it can be. I should correct myself. So it can be, for instance, in the Oedipus myth. Yeah, Oedipus is both an outsider. He has this crippled foot. He's the king, so he's at the very top of society. So he's rather a good victim. Marie Antoinette would be another example, and we can certainly look at, I don't know, modern leaders as well that we blame for all society's ills. If you talk about Trump, for instance, you could say, "Oh, Trump is the cause." No, he's not the cause. He's a symptom. And he's a particularly vile example. So, and there's probably stuff that he may be guilty of, or he is guilty of, as we are all. But it's in some sense a symptom or one case amongst many others. And whoever gets chosen, and you can say, for instance, you can scapegoat other groups. Yeah, you can scapegoat outsiders in some sense. You can scapegoat women are quite often taken, like, so Marie Antoinette, once again, she's like this l'Autrichienne. She's like this person from Austria. She's part of the super rich. She's a woman, so that's something. Crippled. I don't know if that's something I can say, but yeah. Or you can say, yeah, I don't know. When Mexico sends its people, they're not sending their best. They're criminals, they're rapists, and some, I assume, are good people. Yeah. Okay, that was a terrible impression, but
Gotta have the hands. Yeah,
I'm, I'm,
yeah.
I'm getting out.
Mexico, they have all these criminals, rapists.
See, you're much better at this, and you're mimetically driven as well. So,
I live here. I have to live with it, man.
so in some cases, it's yeah, we will find somebody, or I mean, this is once again, I'm going through all the terrible. I'm stepping on every landmine, I assume, but
No, that's a perfect example for the scapegoat mechanism,
a
though.
perpetual scapegoat.
Yeah.
It's like, I think that's something that Freud said as well. So it's like whenever history needed a scapegoat, the Jews were there at hand, and you could just exclude them, pursue them, and you can take anybody. And that's the thing about scapegoats. So because everybody can be the double, the rival, the obstacle to everybody else, in principle, everybody else can become a scapegoat, a sacrificial victim, and yeah. So that role is technically interchangeable, but usually, what you want to prevent, now we tie back to violence, is vengeance, revenge. That's the big danger in Girard for these pre-literate societies, you could say, or communities. Yeah, because when you have like those blood feuds, the violence never ends, and one act of violence demands another. That's violence itself is mimetic. I think there's this other book by Barbara Ehrenreich. It's called Blood Rights, and she talks about how war, when it's adopted by one society as this kind of strategy, by necessity, the other country has to respond as well. You can look at the 60s, of course, in the 50s and 60s, the Cold War, that kind of Bettrüsten, that. See, sometimes arms race. Yeah, the arms race, of course. Yeah. So how often can we destroy the world? Oh, our opponent can destroy us 3 times more than we can destroy him. So we have to invest more into our arms. And so it's this kind of escalatory logic. And what we don't usually recognize is that we imitate each other so much that we become these doubles of each other. And yeah, so in many ways, when you look at McCarthyism in the 60s, the strategies pursued there are the same that we despise that going on in the Soviet Union, like with these processes, these trials and hearings going on and suspicion everywhere. And we don't recognize sometimes that we become just like our opponent. Or that tired old Nietzsche quote, when you gaze into the abyss also gazes. Yeah? So it's, yeah. So second step, I hope I'm being semi-coherent. I trust you will cut out the stuff that is too terrible later on or too obscure.
It's all staying in.
Yes.
It's all one big tapestry.
So, okay. All right, Markus, focus.
All right, you're doing good. Yeah, okay.
I'm trying to be more respectable now. And I'm not sure what I'm imitating. I think like some British TV host from the 50s or something. It's like, well, BBC, we're going to be respectful now. Okay, third step, mimetic theory. Third step then is this idea. Okay, so this kind of principle, the scapegoat principle, scapegoat mechanism, that becomes a cultural principle, and we repeat that cycle over and over and over and over. Yeah? And you ritualize this process of scapegoating and sacrificing either an individual or a group that you want to blame for all society's ills. And that practice then becomes questioned, or we start to question that practice. And that's for Girard, who converted to Catholicism. That starts with the Old Testament, basically, with Judeo-Christianity. They start to look at this whole process because it starts with, once again, the Hebrews, or the ancient Jews. And they're always in the scapegoat position. So this all has very strong ties to Nietzsche, once again, who talks about slave and master morality. And this idea that okay, we now slowly start to turn around the perspective. Myths, when you have these mythic ideas of I don't know, the Norse gods killing Ymir, the giant, and the slain body, then he's the victim, or Marduk slaying Tiamat, was it that? So I may be mixing up some things. I hope I'm not. But they're like this is always the vision of the community that has arisen from chaos. So it's the perspective of the victors of that process. It's the perspective of the murderers. That's what Girard says. So, and with the Hebrews, then in the Old Testament, it starts to turn around, basically, and that's what Nietzsche sees also. So we start to look at another perspective, or we turn the perspective around. It's an epistemological shift, and you suddenly start to consider the whole story from the side of the victim, and that itself becomes this huge cultural shift. So in the Old Testament, that's I think when you look at Girard, there's like 3 books you should read. The first is Deceit, Desire, and the Novel, where he talks about all of these wonderful books like Don Quixote and Madame Bovary, and later on we turn to Dostoevsky, and it's a great book. So for mimetic desire. The second book is Violence and the Sacred, where we turn our attention to ancient myths and also tribal myths like Greek mythology and so on. And then we go to the Scapegoat, where we go from antique myth to the Bible, or the Old Testament, the Talmud, and so on, and the Hebrew scriptures, and the Christian scriptures. And there, this idea is, okay, now we start to turn this around. It starts to turn around in the Old Testament when you have like Joseph, who's scapegoated by his brothers, yeah, and sold into slavery, and then he later on comes back, and when they come to the court, and he says, "No, okay, I could take my revenge now, but I won't." And you have the mark of, yeah, and even before that, you have the story of Cain and Abel. Yeah, so God prohibits vengeance in a sense. Yeah, so he says, okay, yeah, okay, yes, Cain is a murderer, but here's my mark. So whoever avenges against Cain shall be avenged sevenfold. Yeah, okay. We need to drop whatever metal bands we can whenever we can. I have to open the window for a moment. Sorry. Let me know if the sound is too bad. I'll find another solution. Then, so yeah, so this whole process starts to turn around in the Old Testament, and then in the New Testament you have what Girard calls the sacrifice to end all sacrifices, and this is, so far, let me stress this, this is not a metaphysical or spiritual view yet. This is purely anthropology. Yeah. So the idea there is, okay, with Jesus, yeah, he becomes the victim or the scapegoat, who is so obviously a scapegoat, yeah, who is so obviously innocent, yeah, of all that he's being accused of, kind of like Plato and not Plato, Socrates, and some others before him, yeah. So who's so obviously innocent that this whole scapegoat mechanism starts to fracture. Basically, it works less and less well, because we have this idea on the cross. There's the innocent victim, and that becomes, and that's something with Nietzsche, yeah, Dionysus versus the crucified. I'm coming back to this, but we have on the cross this victim that is so obviously innocent and good, yeah, and working, or if you want to have a scapegoat, it only really works as a cultural principle when you don't know that it's a scapegoat. When you're aware that somebody else is innocent of what you accuse him of, it really doesn't work as a cultural principle. So you always need to be blissfully unaware. However, with this icon now on the cross, that whole process is like, oh, our victims. So through Jesus, we can question basically, oh, maybe all of the other like criminals and scapegoat or victims that we used to have in the past, and that we tell stories about, these monsters of mythology, maybe all of them in some sense were innocent victims. Yeah, and that, however, becomes a big problem for us. Once again, we're with Nietzsche. You have Dionysus, the dancing god, eternal return, this culture that revitalizes itself, versus the crucified. Both of them suffer, both of them are in some way resurrected and reborn, but the suffering of the victim has this different implication, or this different meaning. And Nietzsche was like, he was a pastor's son, but he really hated Christianity with a fiery passion. So he was like, oh, damn it. Like, our civilization only persists by sacrifice. And this pseudo-morality or pseudo-humanity that calls itself Christianity is exactly built on the principle that nobody should be sacrificed. So, and once you follow that step, like a few millennia today, it's like this position of the victim is this super important position in whatever debate you have. Like, whoever is the most oppressed is right, no matter what the statements are. So at least in some moral sense, and that is hard to overcome. I feel I'm talking too much, but that's, for Girard, that's the start of the apocalypse. Yeah. So This is the last book, I think the last one that he penned himself. It's called Battling to the End. And this is probably one of the more difficult ones, at least it was for me. But there he explains this logic of the apocalypse and what we mean by that. And this was, yeah, obviously an important idea for me because it was like, oh, an American apocalypse and so on. Ian, you need to talk to me at some point. But this idea that he follows there, oh, in some sense, Christianity already implies or foresees its own failure, and that failure is the apocalypse, because it doesn't really work. What do we put in the stead of it? What do we put where the victim used to be? And when we can't really do away with our violence anymore through this convenient method of scapegoating, because we are now aware, oh, yeah, maybe that victim was innocent and what we're doing here is a terrible thing. So for him, that's the beginning of the end in some way, because we're not good enough to live up to the ethical principles of our religion in some sense. So, I mean, you can always uh, differentiate between these various levels. Where do we consider religions? Like on a metaphysical level, on an anthropological level, on an ethical level. Um, yeah, it's okay. I'm stopping now, at least for a moment.
All right, all right. I mean, that was a beautiful. I mean, that's and it's so Girardian theory, like it's simple, but it does require that explanation. And like I think was it your first chapter is like signifying I can't
Sanguinary signifiers.
yeah, yeah, sanguinary signifiers. And so that's about 80 pages of pretty dense breaking this stuff down. And so you did a pretty good job of getting most of that into this little segment right here cuz like, it's a lot. But I think we can bridge into Cormac McCarthy now. I think we're ready. But and I hate to do this because like, there are probably easier examples of the scapegoating mechanism and this whole theory in other books, but Cormac McCarthy's most popular book, well, technically not. Technically, that's The Road. But, I already know the people are on the edge of their seats. They want to talk about Blood Meridian. But one of the problems, I guess one could say about Blood Meridian is that, there is, I mean, at least in your book, you don't pinpoint a certain character as the definitive scapegoat. Like you kind of indicate that the entire narrative and the structures are caught in the cycle of violence and sacrifice, and like the it could Blood Meridian can be seen as like a meditation on the sacrificial structures within American history. And that's the whole apocalyptic vision thing. So could you, give us, I mean, I set you up. I mean, what do you think about I mean, just mimetic theory, Rene Girard, Blood Meridian? Where do you want to start with all that?
All right. So, I mean, my idea. So I'm going to take a step back again because I think it only makes sense in connection to everything else. So my idea was Girard has this idea of the novelistic writer. Yeah, there are these romantic writers, and this is not English romanticism, but he thinks, okay, there are these romantic writers who I believe that desire is original. It comes from me. Yeah? And then there are these novelistic writers like Dostoevsky, Cervantes, Proust, and I would argue Cormac McCarthy, who say, no, it's absolutely not. It's all imitated, and violence comes from it, and conflict comes from that. So with McCarthy, I think he precedes Girard's major steps in Girard's theory in his own works. So I think for me, the first one, The Orchard Keeper and Child of God, those kind of go together when we explore mimetic desire. We have these three generations in The Orchard Keeper of Orchard Keepers. We have Silder and Ratner at the beginning. They watch each other in the mirror of the car, before they clash against each other, and Ratner tries to kill Silder. Uh, um, and yeah, they are kind of doubles in a sense. So they become rival doubles probably clashing around the car in some sense. And you have all of these little ideas of people imitating each other and culture being transferred from somebody to somebody else. So for me, the Orchard Keeper is very much this early exploration of mimetic desire, but also in this kind of rural community where you look at how that community functions, and the corpse where Ratner is buried. Yeah, you have that huge government tank, and to me that's like the totem, like that's the dead father. Yeah, the dead father and the lie, and he doesn't have to be discovered. We must never know that this body lies there, and everything breaks down after the end once the body is discovered. Yeah, and John Wesley has to go into exile, and Arthur Ownby has to go to the madhouse or whatever it was, and then they become myth, legend, dust. And then Child of God for me already turns it a bit more to this individual perspective of Lester Ballard, who in the beginning doesn't. I mean, he's a weirdo. He lives in his house there somewhere in I don't know, eastern Appalachia, and then they come to sell the mighty good timber and everything. So I'm told. Usually, sometimes I can do a southern accent well, but not
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. You gotta.
but he's really at the beginning. I mean, he's a weirdo, but he's not really guilty of any crimes other than basically trying to stay in his father's house, right? But he's kind of pushed into this position where he's first becomes okay. So he's a voyeur at the beginning, then he becomes this accidental necrophiliac, and then he becomes a serial murderer to fulfill that. But you can also see that in his whole society of Sevier County, they're really like the same as him, many of them, and he's different in degree, but not really in kind. Are you still there? Because there's this.
Yeah. I'm plugging. I'm changing the battery in my video camera. I'm here. I'm listening. Yeah.
All right. So and then he is basically taken apart, like at the beginning of the novel, at the end of the novel, when he dies of pneumonia, and then they dissect him, and that's like this modern medical version of a Dionysian sparagmos, in Euripides, in the Bacchae, when they rip apart the king, the women they are all frenzied and possessed by Dionysus, and they take apart and rip apart Pentheus, the king, and that's kind of the same thing, because he's and what do they see? The medical personnel, they see configurations of monsters worse to come, in the entrails of Lester Ballard, and in a sense that's what happens. So for me, those two are like this earlier explorations of like fairly naturalistically of mimetic dynamics and scapegoating. And then for me, Outer Dark, which is the second, but for me that's already an evolutionary step. After that is this early idea of the apocalyptic logic that we explore first in theory, and then in Blood Meridian we see it set in history. The apocalypse set in history. I think Blood Meridian shows you what happens when all of those cultural prohibitions, rules, law, etc., when all of that is done away with, what we have left. And in the Comanche massacre, I think that's first great example of that. When you have Captain White's filibusters, and they think they may see a little sport, and then suddenly it's this horde of Comanches. And what are they wearing? They're wearing one is in a wedding dress, of course. Another is wearing this cuirass, this armor from some Spanish conquistador, and all of these other things. And they have mirror glass reflecting the sun, but also, of course, when you look into a mirror, then you look back. You once again you gaze back, and their this kind of idea. Oh yeah, that's the thing I forgot. So Girard thinks the apocalypse, that's another term that he uses, is the escalation to extremes. Yeah, when all of that breaks away, and there he uses a good German, or I should say Prussian compatriot of mine, Karl von Clausewitz, and he wrote this big treatise on war, and there he had this idea of the escalation to extremes. Yeah? When you war, basically violence tending to escalate and to become extreme when all of those bounds break away. And there's no bound to imitation. That's the same. That's once again the logic of revenge. Are you still there? Oh yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, and I think Blood Meridian very much sets that in history, or pursues that in history. You know, when you have this clash of three all American cultures that fight against each other. You have the Comanches, you have the Mexicans, and you have the Americans as represented by Glanton scalp hunters. So, and all of that is driven by this logic of going to extremes. And that's why I would say, and that's what Harold Bloom called it, the authentic American apocalyptic novel. So that's where I basically stole the title from. So for me, that's very true, because at the same time you have that whole idea of the failure of Christianity. You have all of those ruined churches everywhere. You have the kid who's trying to go through this conversion. He's not trying to go. He's almost going through this conversion. Later in the novel, he carries this Bible with him, but he cannot read one word of it because he's illiterate. And he basically, for me, that's this idea of historical Christianity. It's like we haven't understood. If you're Christian, like maybe you haven't really understood your own message. That's what Girard says in any way, and I think the kid symbolizes that rather well. You know, he's because if you really take it seriously, then you should be dedicated utterly to nonviolence, even if you're going to die in some sense. Yeah, and that's what we have also in Blood Meridian sometimes. Yeah, you have those, I think the Tigua Indians, was it? Who are this pacifist tribe of Indians who have been wiped out. You have the Delaware Indians who come from the ashes of Gnadenhutten, of that massacre, and they were, I think, a non-violent Christianized tribe at that time of that massacre. So all of that happens there is this idea. Oh yeah, so of course you die when you're non-violent, but you're going to die when you're violent too. So this escalation to extremes, basically. And the kid, for me, the decisive point at the end of the novel is when, I think somebody else asked this. So why does the judge reappear when he does? What's your opinion?
At the end of the novel?
Yes.
Why does he appear when he does?
Yeah.
I think because the kid sets out looking for him. I think the kid wants to descend back into darkness, most likely. I think that the kid is, why does he go to Fort Griffin? He knows who lives there. He knows what's going on there. He kills Elron or whatever his name is outside, or the son of the harness maker or whatever, outside of the place. And he goes in there and he meets the judge and they're talking. He's looking for that confrontation, but he doesn't know yet. He doesn't want that. And it depends on what theory you take about the ending. I'm sure have you heard me talk about kind of the alternative, the kid's actually been the pedophile the entire time? You heard about that?
Oh, that actually works rather well with my interpretation of the ending. But no, I haven't heard of the kid was the pedophile. I haven't heard of that.
So, it's kind of vague all throughout the novel. Obviously, the big handprint and some of the stuff in the judge's scene. But so imagine the kid's actually the one who's evil, actually doing a lot of these like negative acts toward the children and all the stuff throughout the novel. And then we get to the end and he tries to get away from it. He does flee from the judge. He turns into the man. He is trying to get away from that, but he wants to return to the darkness. So he goes to the judge and he's there and they're talking and he once again tries to reject it. And so what does he do? He goes upstairs with the dwarf prostitute, and the dwarf prostitute is a symbol of it's it's a, it can symbolize obviously pedophilia. And why doesn't he have sex with the prostitute? He's impotent. He can't get hard. And so he can't do it. He needs, I guess, a child to be able to, get sexually off or whatever. And so he's like, okay. So he goes downstairs. And so then they have the girl with the bear girl. And then so it's kind of seen as when the judge holds on to him that he kills him or like rapes him, but actually they embrace each other and say like, bro, I love you, bro, like I'm coming back to you. And then they rape the little girl. And then because when the two men come back out, so then a man opens up the door to the bathroom, and then and another guy's going in, and he's like, you don't want to see what's in there. And actually, I've seen that the guy who says that. So there's two guys. Um, there's one guy standing in the mud, and then there's another guy who says that, and that's supposedly, according to this theory, the kid and the judge, because the guy that says that response apparently speaks in colloquial English like the judge would. And so anyway, so the theory is that the kid, and the judge actually reconvene with each other.
I think so. This is fascinating because I haven't heard of this, but this works rather well with what I thought happens at the end. So I think for me the real failure. I mean, the judge reappears like 40 years or something, roughly 40 years after the massacre of the Glanton gang at the Yuma Ferry. And the kid, when he goes traveling to Fort Griffin, as you said, he encounters Elrod, and Elrod is very much his younger double. Yeah? He's the kid. That's him in a way. And yeah, so what does he do? What he doesn't do in between, after the Yuma Ferry massacre, I mean, he beats up some people who think he's a male prostitute, but he tries to be this good person or ethically okay person. Let's say it like that. You could say read in bracket like a Christian, but once again, he can't really read the Bible and he can't really incorporate it. So what happens at the end is that his double, the kid, the young Elrod, and he kills him, and he doesn't have to kill him. He doesn't really have to. He's on top of the situation. I mean, he's lying somewhere in the dark, waiting for Elrod to come back because he knows he's going to come back. You can't tell me. I mean and Elrod has this 1 or 2 shot rifle. So I may be betraying my ignorance of firearms. I'm better versed with swords, but yeah, I think he kills him, and he kills him rather needlessly, and that's his rival double, his younger self. So for me, that's where his conversion that starts at this tree where he has that burning bush, yeah, with what is it, that truce between all those poisonous creatures. You have that burning bush, you have the kid, and you have all those desert scorpions, and you know much more about desert flora and fauna than I do. But you have all these poisonous animals, and all of them are gathered around the burning bush for warmth in the cold night, and they leave each other alone in a sense. Yeah. So that's, for me, that's where the conversion kind of starts, or that's an important moment. But then, and then the end, he fails. He almost makes it, then it fails. Then he finds the judge, and I think that possibility. I mean, everybody or most people say that, yeah, the judge rapes and kills the kid, but the judge for me is this kind of Dionysian, satanic, but Satan is something else. So I'm not meaning the devil. Yeah. So it's I use the term differently. It's not just, oh, the judge is the devil and it's clear.
Do you mean it like just like the adversarial energy?
Yes.
Yeah.
So Satan is like this adversary, the adversary, the obstacle. In some sense, yeah, this rival obstacle that we have, the temptation of the other model, and that whole principle of murderous lies and the exclusion of the victim that culture is built on. So that's what Satan is for Girard. Yeah. So, and for me, the judge is very much that. So he's not really. I'm not sure that the judge is really there in person, as a being of flesh and blood in the end, or whether it's just the mind of the kid. But I think what he does, and that's this embrace, that absorption of the kid in the judge's arms. I think you may be quite right. Maybe the worst thing, I think that's worse than the kid being raped and murdered by the judge. I think the much worse possibility is that the kid kills or the man, I should say, then rapes and kills the little girl with the bear, and that to me would be even worse. So isn't that a fascinating? It's such a great novel. I mean, you can discuss it endlessly from so many, and it's the mark of great literature. Yeah. Blood Meridian. When I first read it, I sometimes expected the judge to be sitting in my living room, because and it really made my view of humanity that much worse. But damn, what a book! Yeah.
Yeah, no. um, um, this is just a random nerdy aside about this before we move on. Um, I just wrote this down. I remember this. You explore the like violence as a contagion, but you bring in was it Clausewitzian logic of escalation. Can you just kind of how does that contagion work into things and relate to the inevitability of conflict?
Yeah, yeah. So for this, I mean, On War is somewhere there. So that's this big book by this Prussian general Karl von Clausewitz, who was yeah, who was in some way ostracized also in his own military, and he always wanted to he wrote that in a reaction to Napoleon, and the Napoleonic conquest of Europe. And what Napoleon did, this idea, I think there's the video game series, Total War. This idea, okay, we're now having this soldat citoyen, or like the citizen soldier, basically, So not the professional army anymore, but total war is this concept where you move these entire huge armies, and I think, the Clausewitz, at the beginning of the novel, he starts like his idea, and the novel. That's not a novel. His treatise, his military treatise. He considers war this kind of duel. Yeah, he says, okay, we can look at war as this kind of duel between two antagonists. The other thing is, war as the continuation of politics by other means. But the other conception is that idea of the duel, where one tries to subdue the other. And he also says that, for instance, the attacker, the one who's on the offensive, wants peace, because you want to end the war and win the war as quickly as possible. And the defender wants peace. No, the defender wants war. Yeah, so because we don't want to lose and we want to hold on or possibly gain back what we have. And there's this idea, of the escalation to extremes between these two. When all of that is done away with. When you look at war, it used to be waged between nations and professional armies, and you have certain rules. At some point, they thought, let's keep to certain rules, and let's not really involve the citizenry. But all of that breaks away, and I think that's the judge at some point talks about war becoming discredited and dishonored. And maybe so. This is sometimes so. I'm not sure whether that works out quite so well in my thought, or whether I've really thought it through. But this idea that war becomes dishonored and that it can spread like everywhere without any rules. There's nothing honorable about it, and maybe that's an illusion to begin with. But this this idea that without any rules governing it anymore, without anybody or anything being taboo. You think of a gigantic nuclear bomb being dropped on cities that wipe out everybody there, or bombings of civilian targets and so on. So without really any strategic value, but just to break the enemy in some sense, then we have crossed some lines, and then maybe we can't go back to this idea of war between professionals that who keep to certain rules. But once again, I'm just this is just me spitballing a bit. Yeah.
No, yeah, you're good. Okay, so I actually have another question I was thinking about. Did you okay, so in your book, you cover Blood Meridian, Orchard Keeper, Outer Dark, Child of God, and The Road. And there are references to the Border trilogy and McCarthy's other novels. I know you had kind of a Sunset Limited section that didn't make it. Did you just feel that those sections were, or those novels, excuse me, were the most potent with Girardian theory, or you just didn't have the space? Like the Border. So, I mean, so why did you choose those specific novels to focus on?
Hmm. That's a good question, and one that is always asked. So, at least my supervisors asked me this back in the day when I had to defend the whole thing. So, for me, I have this idea of McCarthy preceding Girard, at least when you go by time. And Girard would say, yeah, because McCarthy is a novelistic writer, so they have insight that we theorists only we discover later. So that works rather well for both of them, I think, because they can kind of strengthen each other. But I chose those because I think that the Orchard Keeper and Child of God, as I said. So I think they represent this early phase where McCarthy, um, consciously or not, grasps this idea of mimetic desire, conflict, and scapegoating in a sense. And for me, that's a step in an evolution of McCarthy's evolution as a writer. So for me, I'm trying not to read the novel as, or these novels as these individualistic pieces, but basically in a sequence that, or an evolution. All of them connecting each other and develop themes and insights further on. Um, and for me, then, Outer Dark and Blood Meridian are these very clear articulations of the apocalyptic logic, the logic of apocalypse, escalation to extremes. Outer Dark is purely parabolic. Logical is like a fable. You find it in principle in this, like for instance, in the episode with the Gadarene swine, which is just another breathtaking episode in literature. I think it's like horrifying and super funny at the same time. And Blood Meridian, just this absolute firestorm of an escalation to extremes where you can see, yeah, okay, this is what the end of the world is contained in, basically. I mean, it's not actually it. And then you have The Road. For me, that's the proper endpoint of McCarthy in his evolution as a, you could say, Girardian. Yeah.
Okay.
And where other forces, so I mean, I'm always talking about Girard, and that's a main thing of or a main yeah, a main point of the book. But the other two ideas that come to the fore in these works is like mythical theory, my theory of narrative, and McCarthy being this anti-myth writer, a writer of anti-myths, and mythoclast. I think that's something that I stole from. I steal that from John Kant. I think I did, and I think J. Ellis. They wrote about McCarthy as a mythoclast who investigates and turns American and Western national myths on their head. Yeah, and entropy basically as this other principle where we consider both natural processes and social processes. Maybe less so. That's when I call what I call vilentropy. Yeah, vilentropy. But actually signification. Yeah, because you have that idea of entropy in information theory as well, and so all of that kind of works together. And I think, for instance, in The Road, we have that thermodynamic and informational entropy rather nicely put together. And that's, for me, that's the road as a post-apocalypse is like, okay, Here, everything has already happened. There's not that much violence in the road. It's just the remnants of violence, yeah, ultimate violence, you could say. And now let's see what we can still learn from it. And yeah, and that's for me the literary conversion that you can go through. I think in a way when you read McCarthy from beginning to end. Yeah. So you follow along the path of McCarthy from start to finish. Well, in some sense, and then you end up with the road where you have that idea of conversion in some ethical sense, even though it may all very well be too late.
And this, okay. I mean, dude, and we can do this all in a second because, like, I did a 10-hour course on the Orchard Keeper. I have to talk to you about all that. I have to talk to you about a lot. But just a quick aside. What's up?
I listened to most of it.
God, you killed it too. Like I saw your book and I was like, dude, this guy, I still need to add your stuff to that. But I was like, this, how hard it is to find secondary sources on that book. I was going through the sticks on that. It's not as written about as, even just Outer Dark, which, I understand there's a lot more potent symbolism and ideas to if you want to get a paper published in Outer Dark than the Orchard Keeper. But
I think, though, I mean, the Orchard Keeper it's a challenge, right? It's, I mean, in terms of its spatial temporal narrative arrangement, I think is that essay by Prather. I think that was one of the best literary essays that I've ever read. That really cleared up things for me. I think that maybe it. He talks about how the Orchard Keeper is arranged, and then it's like, oh yeah, of course, makes total sense now when on reading it the second, third time with that essay in store. I think it may have been Prather, but I should check
was
it.
it the one that combines the Road and the Orchard Keeper? The Road rewrites the Orchard Keeper? No. Yeah, no, I know. I went through a lot. But did you so you seemingly take Diane C. Lucy's um perspective. I don't know, maybe she was the first person I ever saw talk about it, that John Wesley Ratner's the narrator of the Orchard Keeper. Like, is it? I mean, her theory is that it's a recollection of a memory that he's in the graveyard at the end and he's looking back at everything and that's why it's all fragmented. What do you think of that theory, or do you think something different?
No, I mean, obviously there are some parts that John Wesley was never present for, right? Because he was a
Yeah,
little baby boy at home. So in some sense, it may be his imagination. I mean, he doesn't matter. I don't know. Is it
yeah, yeah,
really important who tells the story? I mean, it works because you have that whole. I mean, Wake for Susan, right? You have that another. Is it also? I think he was also Wes. Or I think it is Wes, right? It's just Wes there. Or was it also John Wesley? Similar names, similar situations. Somebody sitting on a like somewhere close to home in Wake for Susan on a cemetery, and imagining this life that has happened. And yeah, I think it. I mean, it makes perfect sense. So I'm super fine with it. But at the same time, I don't think the novel falls apart if he isn't the narrator. But yeah, I mean, far be it from me to dispute the great Diane Lewis.
no, I mean, no, dude, you can dispute whoever, man. It's glad she
There are some
doesn't have.
others.
She doesn't.
There are some others, like I usually hit those in the footnotes or the endnotes. I hate endnotes, but I know they're a necessity. But sometimes when I take umbrage with what some other scholars have thought, I was like, no, that's not what the text says at all. It's not. It doesn't say that this is a jaguar or a panther or something. Like, no, it's a little cat. An owl couldn't carry away a panther. Painter, yeah, as they should say in the book. That doesn't make sense. Or somewhere else, it's like somebody's saying, "Oh, the judge isn't very seductive," and I'm like, "Have you read the novel? He's literally a great favorite. What? Who publishes this?" So I'm hiding those. Maybe I have erased them. I hope I have erased them. Maybe not. I don't know. But sometimes, when you disagree, yeah, okay. I don't want to make this a big thing, but that's wrong. So I put it in the end notes.
Yeah, yeah, that's better. That's better to put it in the endnotes of a secondary source book. I've been unfortunate. I've had to pull myself off of. I've stopped this, but there are plenty of Cormac McCarthy scholars and people who I should have an interview, but I'm blocked. They've blocked me on Twitter because I'll mention that. I'll be like, "What were you talking about?" And they're like, "Dude, this my guy must be a psycho. Why is he talking? Why is he blowing up my Twitter post that's posted me and my son out fishing about the orchard keeper?" I'm like, so I've slowed my roll on that. Do you know who Aaron Gwynn is? He does.
No, I don't think I do. I don't think I
Yeah, he
do.
has a YouTube channel on Cormac McCarthy. He's like kind of like the other big Cormac McCarthy content creator. And one night I was just like super like energized for some reason and like just raging. And I picked apart some of his stuff and now I'm blocked. I'm like, damn, I actually like that guy. I feel bad. I'm like, damn, like I guess that and I don't want to like email him and be like, hey man, I was just raging out at night and I like said some crazy shit to you. I'm sorry, bro. Do you want to come on my podcast? You know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
better to put it in the end note. Better, I need to write a book and just take out all of it, all my anger in the end notes.
yes. Sometimes it's good to Sometimes it's good just it's fine. I can disagree in silence and be quiet about some of the things that I'm thinking. So now it's just sometimes it's just not worth it, right? But yeah, I mean, when you have hundreds of hours of video content online and you're talking about people, then I think you're bound to step on some toes, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. No, I'm always shitting on someone. I mean, I try not to. I try to be better, but then sometimes it's just like, all right, I just can't. I can't hold the facade, like, because everyone does it in private. In private with your friends, that's what you do. But then suddenly, as a public figure, you're not public figure, but online, you're not supposed to do that. But I try not to because like it just is like violence begets violence. It's just a cycle of violence. If I start talking shit on people, then everyone starts talking shit on me. I notice. I'm like, okay, I just gotta slow the roll. Um, so
And this is where the turntables. And now you can tell me what you disagree with.
on you, yeah, but uh,
We can also postpone that. That's also fine.
honestly, I didn't see too much in your, but okay, well, I'll skip the Orchard Keeper for now. We can. Well, okay, talking about the double, are Rinty and Cola the double in Outer Dark?
No, they're not the devil. What? That makes no sense. Why should they be the devil? That's no. The devil is a principle. The devil is not a person. The greatest trick the devil ever played was to tell people he existed. No, or to yeah, deceive people that no, there's no such thing. That's just us. In a sense, yeah. So I think, yeah, when you look at McCarthy, uh, I'm starting to ramble, so I'm going to rein myself in here. But I I think evil in a sense is, from the Girardian perspective, is violence, yeah, and the violence that we do to each other, desiring things that we shouldn't want, yeah, wanting things that we shouldn't, um, and I think so. To me, the road where we have also, I mean, you have Böhme in Blood Meridian, but I think he's very strong in the road as well when he talks about the Saliter drawing of the earth. And Jakob Böhme was this great, yeah, mystic, in a sense, yeah, total heretic, wonderful. McCarthy would have probably liked him. So, and I think the idea is not so much pantheism, but a panentheism. Yeah, this idea of the divine. I mean, and we can tie this back to Gnosticism. Yeah, this divine spark that lives in everybody. I mean, I think this is something that where you can unite Jakob Böhme and, I don't know, the New Testament and thoughts on entropy and so on. It's like this idea. There's us, and maybe we all carry some divine spark in us, or carry a bit of the fire, in a sense. And if there's us, and we are made in, as the Bible would say, or the Christian would say, in God's image, yeah, and you have that commandment, yeah, love thy neighbor as thyself, love God and love the neighbor as thyself. And this idea, this double, it's a double commandment, yeah, and the one is like the other. So I'm like, oh, so maybe if we love ourselves and our neighbors, then we love God also. That means, because we're also made in God's image and so on. Okay, that could mean that, yeah, we're all this together, all of us, we're God together. But since we're not united in a sense, then we have to, since we can't, we're separated and we're so driven by our individual egos and our desires, and we clash around everything. Yeah. So, and that keeps us from doing what we could. So it's like this old idea of theodicy. Yeah. Why doesn't God do anything against the evil in the world? Well, we are God. Maybe we are God. Why don't we do anything against it? Because we're not united. So, and I think that's I mean that's that Böhme thought. Yeah. So if you read the Aurora, it's a super hard book. Like Aurora, I think, oder die Morgenröte im Aufgang, but the English title is like the Morning Rise or something. I mean, in Blood Meridian you have the 6 philosophical points, and but he's such a fascinating thinker. It's totally cryptic, but there's these little bits of light, and if you think like, oh, okay, I think that makes sense. And I think that McCarthy, expresses this in some sense beautifully in the road. Yeah. So basically, the point is a very banal one, and it's like, just like love each other or die, as we have in Sunset Limited, for instance. You must love one
Yeah.
another or die. Yeah. I think that didn't. I'm sorry, I veered off of Color and Rinthi, the devil.
Okay, no, okay. So let me draw you back to Outer Dark really fast. So obviously, honestly, I think that the Outer Dark section may be the best in the entire novel. Like you really tied because Girard does talk about a lot of points related to obviously Christianity. That's like the basis of a lot of his stuff. And I think what Outer Dark, the Christian symbolism in that one's probably stronger than any other McCarthy novel. Um, and so the only reason I mentioned that because I was just asking because if I'm not mistaken, do you identify the double as Kola and the triune?
Mm, no, not really. So for
Was
me,
there any doubleness in Outer Dark?
doubleness.
Like
I
the
mean, you have.
example, like Sildar and Marion, like was there anything like that in Outer Dark?
Oh, let me think. I have to think hard and think again. I'm sure that, I mean, there must be. I think there's a lot of apocalyptic symbolism, but I think that the double imagery is probably in most other novels is a bit stronger. Uh,
Okay, okay, so let's hop to that. What would you say is some of the best double imagery you've seen? Obviously, the Sunset Limited. What else? What other strong doubles have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, you have Sildar and Ratner in The Orchard Keeper, as we already talked about. We have Satri and his like anti-Satri, that he
Yeah.
to some extent imagines. Yeah, and there's a lot of beautiful insights in Satri. I think that ties back to that one question you asked at some point. Why did I choose? I mean, I couldn't. I mean, this is already way too long. The book is already way, way, way too long, and my publisher was like, "Where's your book? Can you cut out another 50,000 words?" And I was like, I can't. I'm sorry. It's impossible. Um, so I left out. So I tried to integrate um, Satri and the Border trilogy for the most part, and even bits from the Counselor or the Stonemason in some of the more theoretically or minded chapters. Um, but I think, yeah, you have Satri and anti-Satri, his dead twin brother, twins. Yeah, whenever you have twins in McCarthy, and they pop up quite a few times too. For instance, in Blood Meridian, you have those German twins. Yeah, mad
Yeah.
German twins, which is always, I mean, it's fun for me because oh yeah, there's Speyer, the Prussian weapons trader, German, yes. There are these the mad German twins there, or there's I think another rival double would be John Grady Cole and Duena Alfonso for me, because they're basically competing around Alejandra, and they're both in some sense maimed. Yeah, so both of them have these wounds that
That's
they
good.
carry, disabilities. So I mean, it doesn't always have to be 100% spot on. Yeah, that oh yeah, these are clearly the same person, like Elrod and the kid, or Satri and anti-Satri. Um, but it's just that competition renders us alike in some sense, because I start to, I don't know, maybe, for instance, if I admire your energy and positivity that you bring to your YouTube channel, and I'm like, damn, maybe I should do a YouTube channel, and Ian is my model now, so I'm going to try to
We're
be
gonna
just
get you on.
and positive, and try to imitate that, and maybe talk about similar points. Yeah, sure. For instance, we can compete about what's the right way to read Cormac McCarthy. Yeah, and then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I should. But we're separated by distance, which is very good, because that means we can't carry our rivalry to too big of an extreme.
There can't be two Cormac McCarthy high school teachers in one city, man. That would that'd be
This city ain't big enough for this town ain't big enough for two McCarthy scholars.
that'd be so. I mean, that it sounds silly. A lot of this. So, like, when you bring up Girardian theory, like I bring it up to people on my channel. I even teach it to my classes because it's actually good for high school students. I'm like, guys, like, because like sibling rivalry, high school rivalry, like this is actually a big thing. Like at that level, and people look at me like I'm dumb. Like they look at me like and they don't understand that, like maybe they haven't explored enough or like understood human psychology very well. But like mimetic desire, like it's a real thing. Like we don't, like, most people, I think you have to, I mean, do you think you can this is a question for you. Do you think you can transcend mimetic desire?
That's a, I mean, this would be a question for the true Gerardians out there, right? Um, so I think sometimes awareness itself helps a lot. So I have withdrawn myself from conflicts where I was like, oh, I'm kind of drawn into this conflict. But why am I drawn into this conflict? I desire, like we're in a triangle and I'm trying to, or I want the same thing that this person has, or we're competing for the same person. Like in romance, for instance, yeah. And then maybe I'm like, okay, maybe it's not worth it, and maybe the dynamics of the whole exchange, we're just driving each other crazy, and it doesn't help either of us. So awareness can help you sometimes to take a step back and think, okay, let's not do that. That's maybe a bad model of interaction, not the model that I'm imitating. That may be a bad model, but and not all that worthy of my imitation. But the whole dynamics that we're engaging in are not healthy. But there are also times where I'm thinking, okay, we can use this in a positive way. There's a lot of talk about among Girardians about positive mimesis, where it's like, okay, we want to imitate good models, choose good models, try to imitate those. Where it's the good thing is, with McCarthy, he's literally inexhaustible. So bring it back to us. So we could say, oh yeah, actually, both of our interpretations can exist alongside each other, and we can actually have a nice conversation, and maybe we both learn something, and that's healthy. That's a good thing. Or I could say, wow, that person has read so much and is such an eloquent, wonderful speaker, inspiring figure in some sense. Also seems to be doing a lot of charity work. All of those are, or I don't know, some just once again, I'm just imagining something here. So all of this is worthy of admiration and imitation, and I can do this without going into competition with a person. Yeah, so I can learn something and use things without necessarily being drawn into rivalry. And I think in that sense, yeah, I think imitation is to some extent, especially in your early years, inevitable, and later on you can probably also transcended in some sense. I'm not sure always that I always follow Girard in saying, okay, there's absolutely nothing original. Um, so there's no originality. Maybe not. I mean, but we can. I think the ways that we engage with each other, we can at least. Well, who cares about originality? After all, it's like just that's just our pride. Yeah, I want to be one of me, one of a kind, but I will probably discover that I'm really not because I'm always learning from somebody else and influenced by somebody else. And then maybe that's humility. I think yeah, finding a healthy humility and taking the good parts from good models that you want to imitate. I think that's a good way and healthy way of engaging with Girardian theory. As for teaching, sorry, I I'm sometimes wondering, okay, how can I solve this conflict amongst students or something? And sometimes I'm tempted, maybe I should just give them some enemy that they can unite against. And who could that be? That's me. So I can be your scapegoat because you can't do anything to me anyway, or not too bad. Okay, I get some evil emails from your parents, but at least you two are friends now because you have agreed that I am a terrible person. Yeah, so that could be a way of using the scapegoat mechanism to your advantage.
You're the healer, the villain, you're everything. You're bringing families together, man, through pain and bad grades. That's great. I love that, man. That should be my new. If I'm ever questioned again, I'm like, I brought. Look at. This is the first time you guys have talked ever. This is the first emotion you guys have ever had in your family. Like, this is great. Let's go.
And it's all because you decided that you mutually hate me, which is good.
Yeah, no. Anyway, yeah, sorry. I just wanted to mention that because like some of this may, seem, but yeah, exactly. You have to be aware. You have to look within. You have to like understand these things, and like obviously, I do think you can transcend mimetic desire. I think it's rare. I don't think it's like it's maybe even harder than we imagine it is. But yeah. Okay. So
Maybe not. I mean, maybe not as such, but I think you can at least in points you can. Yeah, I think,
yeah.
and or you exchange once again you exchange models or you exchange your mimetic desire for one thing by another that is maybe more healthy and that you have found
Yeah.
yourself through your studies and so on.
Yeah, because I don't think it's ever because like when you get old, you're gonna want to be young. Like there's always a desire, but like, can you control it? And in the things that you want to do and the things you care about, hey, like you said, making sure it's healthy. So we're talking about. So we talked about the double. We talked about the intro stuff. Um, I want you to maybe like show the people who's your favorite? So here, I mean, some of the examples, I mean, of the scapegoat in McCarthy's literature that I remember that you wrote about: Lester Ballard, Cola Holm, Marion and Arthur, maybe John Grady Cole, Magdalena, and Cities of the Plain. What would you say is the best example of the scapegoat, or one that you want to talk about in McCarthy's literature? And then could you kind of like walk us through it in regards to Girard's theories?
Yeah. Oh, I mean, when we talk about Cities of the Plain, Magdalena, you've brought her up. I think she's maybe not important or big enough as a character in the novel, but at least in the whole structural scarcity of it, like how is she being treated? She has these epileptic fits, and then what do the other prostitutes do? They gather around and they dip their handkerchiefs in her blood or whatever it was, yeah, or her sweat. I can't quite recall, but I think it was her blood actually. And like they treat her as this holy idol, so that works. But I think the much more explored versions or the much more explored scapegoats would be from Mikala and Lester. So I
Yeah.
think there you have the most fully realized explorations of scapegoating.
Okay. Well, let's hop into. So, how is Lester a scapegoat in Child of God?
Yeah. Okay. At the danger of repeating everything that I said at the beginning at some point, because I've been rambling for a bit. But I mean, when you look at Lester, I mean, his daddy killed himself, and he's living in this. The first thing that we witness is this auction of his home. Yeah, he's clearly an outcast in his own community from basically when we first meet him at the start of the novel. At the same time, he's not that different in kind. Yeah, his few contacts that he has, like Rubel or Roybal, the not the orchard, the dump yard keeper that he interacts with. Um, and then that whole dump yard is also another wonderful cesspit of mimetic imitation. Yeah, he starts to engage in unsavory acts with his own daughters. To chase up the suitors, and he undifferentiation. Yeah, this whole notion. Yeah, things lose their meanings. When you have a daughter called Hernia Sue, I think that's wonderful. Another, you might call her Chlamydia or something. That's a beautiful sounding name, isn't it? And uh, it's and but so that shows you, and Lester himself, he hails from this line of people that, like, his granddaddy was a white cap. Basically, this other version or another vigilante group, kind of like the KKK. So it's like, yeah, some people you can't do anything with. Yeah, he's like in this line of people, but the junkyard keeper is like it. Then the he has this other friend where you have that baby. So incest seems to be quite rampant there in Sevier County, where he's at. So that's something. Then you have people who cheat him when he tries to trade watches that he's found. Yeah, they try to cheat him. So they're all not terribly nice. Yeah, or he has that conversation with a black gentleman in jail where it's like, "What did you do?" "I cut him MFR's head off with a pocket knife." It's McCarthy is wonderful. Um, yeah, you see that violence is like rampant anywhere, and Lester. I mean, he's guilty clearly of spying on people doing the dirty. Yeah, when they don't consent to being watched. Okay, that's maybe not nice. But it's not that bad. Come on. And then, but the first accusations against him. Yeah, he's being accused of rape, um, and it's clearly, yeah. The woman even says it's them other two MFers I want jailed. So even though he had that interaction with her where he tried to be nice, he actually tried to be nice. Yeah. So I have this huge sympathy for Lester Ballard. Um, Probably wouldn't like him if I met him, but at least in theory, I can empathize. Uh,
That's so bad when you start. I just when you start sympathizing with McCarthy characters, and you're like, oh no,
yeah.
I feel
So
bad.
yeah, he's wrongfully accused. Yeah, and the sheriff, wonderfully named Fate Turner. Yeah, because it basically turns from there. It's like, yeah, what else are you going to do? Yeah, like murder, we haven't found you yet. So he hasn't killed anybody, he hasn't raped anybody at that point. He has spied on some people having sex. Okay. Um, but after that, it's like he finds that dead couple, and he obviously, what you do when you are ostracized from society and you can't get a girl. Okay, there's one. I'll take her with me. Okay. By the way, yeah. So this is one of the parts that I'm proud of. But if we have time, we talk about Entropy, Maxwell's demon, at some point. That's that wonderful episode in Child of God with when the house burns down. But um,
Do you want to talk about it? You got.
but maybe
You're the one talking. If you got the stamina, I got the time. I mean, you're the one talking.
I have as much. I think, it's only 5. I have time. But let's. I don't know. We could go back to that later on if we want to. But let's stick with scapegoating first. So he's not at all guilty there, but he's driven into this whole thing. Yeah, turns from, okay, he's a voyeur at the beginning. Okay, But then he's basically okay. Nobody forced him to take the girl with him, but he's a very lonely person, Lester. Poor Lester, very lonely. You can, yeah, it's like okay, okay, let's, yeah, the girl. Really sorry, I don't. Women watching, I don't think like this. Yeah, so I just
Good,
think,
you're already married. You're already.
yeah. So you shouldn't take dead people. So disclaimer: you should not take dead people along with you to have sex, no matter how lonely you feel. It's not a healthy thing.
I love how he was ahead of the game of Ted Bundy. I love how this was like, necrophilia. Like, if this was released like 10 years later, it probably would have been a much more of a success because people were probably like, "Who does this? Is this a real thing?"
I think I mean, he built on some historical cases, right? I think the Edgeen murders, or the who also kept body parts and I think dug up some bodies and so on. So I think that partly inspired it. And Blevins, yeah, the Blevins murders. I can't recall the details historically, but of course you have Blevins later on turning up as a character in All the Pretty Horses. Um, but yeah, so Lester for me is partially driven into his role because everybody is already, yeah, that guy's weird. So we put him in that scapegoat role, and that's what he's going to be for us. And yeah, and he very much complies with it. Yeah, he fulfills his role until at the end, even in the end, yeah, when he's being reintegrated, you have both sides of the scapegoat. First, the side that commits crimes, and those crimes are usually things that go against the very base foundations of society. Yeah, and for instance, what's the thing in incest? Okay, sex within the family. Yeah, wonderful topics today. Yeah, so that's a boundary. That's a taboo. That's a difference. Yeah, that is annihilated. That shouldn't be. We have the rule of exogamy. Yeah, sex only outside the tribe or the family structure, yeah, and procreation there. So that's the foundational thing. Another thing would be something like yeah, and sex only with the living. So don't abolish the difference between dead and living. Yeah. So that's another thing that Lester does. And similar with Oedipus once again. So he is both guilty of sleeping with his mother and killing the king. Regicide, also a bad thing. Infanticide. These are all these super strict foundations of society, like the base rules, and you're overriding them. Like, and this idea of differences being abolished. That's very strong in Girardian theory. That's why he talks. He talks about the sacrificial crisis mostly. But I prefer crisis of distinctions or crisis of undifferentiation, because I think I can do more with difference when I talk about entropy and so on. So it's sometimes you're like just pick the term that is better for you to, I don't know, work with later on. Yeah, so Lester is for me clearly a scapegoat, and later on he's being reintegrated in society, and you can do that nicely. Yeah, he's on the on some graveyard for the undesirables. Yeah, but you can at the same time tell the legend, and by telling the legend of how this terrible necrophiliac voyeur weirdo serial murderer. Yeah, how we got that guy, and by that we reaffirm that you shouldn't be a necrophile, and you shouldn't be a serial murderer, and you shouldn't spy on people having sex. Not necessarily in that order. Um, yeah, and with color, it's kind of the same thing. There's the whole incest thingy, and there was there's a wonderful essay by Sandor Goodhart, who writes about Oedipus and King Laius's many murderers, and he the whole play by Sophocles, Oedipus Rex, yeah, is built on this investigation. Oedipus is trying to look into the cause of the plague. Yeah, we always in McCarthy we always have floods, plagues, epidemic, signs of epidemic or wildfires that are being spread, like these major signs of catastrophe that always signify the malaise of the society. But in Oedipus Rex, Oedipus is trying to find out who caused the plague, and there's this idea. Oh, whoever killed King Laios did. Okay, so then let's find out who did it. And then he finds, oh, there's a witness. Actually, somebody witnessed the murder, and he says that there were many people who killed King Laios on the road. And Oedipus is like, yeah, hey, that's good. I was already beginning to suspect it might have been me because I killed that one traveler on the road, which I'm not really proud of, but he was in my way, an obstacle. Yeah, and then they want to hear that witness because, as Oedipus says, one person cannot be many persons or many people. Yeah, another Girardian. That's something that Girard would be once again be in disagreement with. But yeah, I mean, technically, he's obviously right. And then what do? They look for the first half of it. They try to find that witness, and then in the second part, they forget about it. That one testimony that could really exonerate Oedipus, and like Sophocles put this in there, and it's like, why did he put that in there? Because it doesn't really, yeah, when it's just being forgotten in the second part, and maybe Sophocles was already onto something, because how does Oedipus committing incest and killing the king cause the plague? In a myth, it does. In a myth, yes. But when we have a realistic version of society, yeah, that's maybe not so good, but it doesn't cause a plague. So so Sophocles may already have been this anti-mythic writer, and I think, as you know, that in the Outer Dark chapter, I'm thinking quite a bit about ancient Greek mythical structures and so on. So and I'm like, hey, wait a minute. What if Color never committed incest with Rinthi? So what if he isn't actually guilty of that? And then I'm
Which is
like,
a great point. Which is a great point because that technically is never actually fleshed out.
I mean, it's on the dust jacket. So yeah, I think it says on the dust jacket, and you have been to the archives, so you've seen the same things that I've seen,
Yeah.
and some more probably. And I think that in some sense, there's like, oh yeah, we would have been some kind of double kin. But even that, maybe it was a paternal kind of incest. So it's not super
It's
damning.
I need to figure out because what's funny about the desk, Cormac McCarthy wrote the description on the desk jacket of the Orchard Keeper, which is I don't know what what was going on over there. They're just like, all right, man, you do this too. Save us some time. So I wonder if he did that for Outer Dark. I never heard that. I'd have to really look. That's nerdy, nerdy research notes. Like,
So, but then again, it's already begging the question, because I'm like already falling for it. It's like, hey, maybe he didn't commit incest, but that's not the point. It's not even the point. It's like, even if he did, that couldn't explain the state of the world in Outer Dark or something. So I'm already once again falling for the mythical thought, and that's what what I think McCarthy is taking up arms against. Yeah, in literary terms. Yeah, and Color, of course, he's being pursued all the time. Wherever he goes, they are suspicious of him. They're not being nice to him, and destruction follows in his wake in the form of the Triune. Yeah, and I think the best episode of that is really the Gadarene Swine episode. It's so, yeah, it's one of the best episodes in McCarthy. It's so funny, and horrifying at the same sense, in the same time. Where
you
yeah,
have a beautiful section on that. You have a beautiful section. The way you set up all that, and yeah, I mean, just and that's like the ultimate framing of the scapegoat and the whole. Yeah, I mean that's such a great moment.
yeah, and also, I mean, it's thank you once again. But I mean, when this preacher, or what looked like one, comes in there and is like, yeah, it's like, don't hang him, tain't Christian. Yeah, so he should be standing up for his defense, right? And then they drive him, I mean, first the swine go over the bluff, okay, or the hogs, I think. Yeah, the Hogdrovers. Um, and then it's like, and then color himself jumps over the bluff like they used to do in ancient Rome, yeah, the from the Tarpeian rock, or like the pharmakos in Greek, in the Greek sacrificial ritual. Yeah, it's not Christian. Yes, exactly. That's exactly the point. Yeah, because we're reverting back to this more ancient mode of sacrifice and exclusion. Yeah, so I'm sorry. So yeah, I think color is another wonderful example of the scapegoat. And I think at the end of the novel, he's also limping like Oedipus in some sense. Yeah.
Going a little bit off topic, but I think that was a great breakdown of the scapegoat mechanism. Um, I've been meaning to ask you this forever. I have a couple questions that I have a lot of questions actually. Every time I read your book, but I'm like, okay, I could sit here all day and like ask you these little meta questions. But this is something that you didn't get to go to. Did you read The Passenger in Stella Maris?
This is the moment that I'm going to confess something. Um, I have told you about my whole history with university and so on. So, and I bought The Passenger and Stella Maris, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to read it once I'm done with this whole thing, because I was afraid. I was afraid. Okay, what if there's something in there that's going to falsify everything that I've written about? It's like, what if there's something terribly new in there and that I didn't consider at all? So I didn't read it when it first came out. And then McCarthy did something horrible. He died. And yeah, I haven't. They've been sitting there on my shelf right there, staring at me for
Well, that's okay. I
years
get
now.
it. That's nice.
I haven't read it. It has been painful. It has been a bit painful, and it's a bit. I'm a bit ashamed, but I haven't read them yet.
No, no, there's nothing to be ashamed about. Man. You don't need to read them. I mean, you can take your time, and it's a lot. I mean, it was when I was reading them, I had that feeling too. I was like, this is probably it. I mean, this is it. I mean, it'd be crazy to think that he would write something again. I mean, maybe there'll be a posthumous novel, but this is the end of the road, you know? This is um yeah. You'll enjoy it though. I mean, you're gonna when you do, you're gonna love it, and your brain's gonna go crazy with doubles and scapegoating, and it's you're gonna go. Nothing falsifies either. Like I'll let you know. Like you're only
Honestly.
adds to your argument. It literally only adds. Like you're gonna be more. You're gonna feel more prolific after that.
Yeah. See, now you have to confront yourself sometimes, or as you like you're Jungian too, right? So you have to confront your shadow self, and for me, it's like it's both pride and shame and some other things connected to it. It's like this is literally the last in his lifetime work, published work in his lifetime. So I have to save it. I have to make time for it. I have to really get into it once again, and then it's going to be a bit painful, I guess. Yeah, but at the same time, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, no, you'll be happy, man. You're gonna it's gonna be a lot, but okay. And speaking of Jungian theory and psychology, this is just these are just random. I'm just throwing you. This is fire round now. This is random questions. You write. Well, you pull a quote out from an early draft of Blood Meridian, and you say, you talk about the judge who says of himself that he is someone who knows how to make the sleepers wake. Are the sleepers? Who do you think he's referring to when he describes the sleepers?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it goes on with yeah. I know I'm the one. I'm he whom yeah can make the sleepers wake, the dead to dance. Yeah, something like that. So I think who are the sleepers? In some sense, it may be. I mean, in psychoanalytical terms, we could say that which is being repressed. Yeah. So all the death and violence and bloodshed, and maybe all the victims and all of that thing, that whole process, maybe coming back to haunt us. So I'm not sure if it's a specific person. It could be. It could also be a investigation of American myths. Yeah. So everything that I think it's, I think it is really like the dead in our culture. Yeah, that civilization may be built on, if you follow Freud or Girard, and with different takes, but or Nietzsche even. So in all of that, I think he can wake all of that. He embodies that. I think he. I mean, for me, the judge is more a principle than a person, and that's why he can embody so many things. To some, he's the whale, Moby Dick, the whale. He's Ahab. He's Mephistopheles. He's the devil. Yeah. He's It's like he's whatever your imagination wants him to be. The judge, a good friend. Yeah. But he's such a frightening person. I think everything that's frightening and violent and horrific in our civilization, but also that civilization may only exist in the first place because of that terrible violence at its roots. So yeah, it's for me, it's probably that.
Yeah, no. Yeah, and that's funny you mentioned that, I have another quote from your book. You call Judge Holden the most frightening figure in all of American literature, so, um, you don't
I'm not alone in that. I think Bloom said
no.
it too, and some others. So, but I have literally. I mean, you want to take things seriously. I mean, there are terribly violent, psychopathic, murderous characters in other works, right? But none of them have this insane eloquence, this seductive quality. None of them go as unopposed, as the judge does. I mean, the kid offers resistance, as you could say that early Christianity offers resistance, or Judaism offers resistance to that founding violent principle. But at the same time, it's not enough. It's just maybe too little, maybe too late. I don't know. And he's to me, he's absolutely a horrific, insanely impressive literary creation. Yeah, I mean, I may be guilty of falling for the judge. As some people have said, it's like, oh yeah, he's just talking out of his own behind. Yeah, and whoever takes it seriously is already falling for the joke or something. But I think there's, when you think it through, and you have, I've seen a lot of your videos where you talk about it, and you extrapolate and interpret it beautifully, in the same sense that also some of our fellow scholars have done. I think when you can take it seriously, and you probably should, at least when you think that, yeah, a lot of the things that he embodies or speaks about are very true processes, forces governing our societal evolution. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. There has to be an axiomatic, I guess, philosophy of your own life. You have to be a certain type of individual, believe certain type of things, to be able to digest that, to take Judge Holden seriously. And maybe we're wrong. Maybe we're just the weird guys that like swords or whatever, and we're just primed. Because I know our boy Patrick O'Connor. He believes that he's more of a rambling seducer, and so maybe that maybe that's why he's the professor.
He is.
Shout out to him.
Cheers, Patrick.
You're not watching this, but cheers. um, okay, so let me throw you the bone, man. So in Child of God, you talk about I think you call it like neurobiotic or something, or the necrobiotic, the necrobiotic.
Necrobiosis. I have to check it out. I have to look it up.
Yeah, hold on, I have it right here. You call it. Yeah, you call it the necrobiotic processes, and you're talking about the gradual decomposition of bodies, and then you connect that to the principles of thermodynamics, chaos, entropy, and how McCarthy, through like necrophilia, is kind of speaking on kind of the broader themes of disorder and whatnot. And we just the physics of morality. I think maybe you say. Maybe I'm making that up, but
I think it might have been mortality. Not sure.
oh no, it is mortality. Okay, yeah, yeah. I have that. Okay, not morality, mortality. Yeah.
Patrick, Connor, and me were both engaged in physics of something that has not that much to do with physics. More morality.
It's good. It's
Sometimes you can just that's the seductive part here. It's like sometimes I need to call this synchronary signifiers just because of the alliteration, or this. I don't know.
That's fire. I mean, let me just say, there's some people like that we both know. I won't mention their name. You've met them. I haven't. And they have great ideas, but their execution, and I'm not even talking about Patrick O'Connor, but just others, their
Oh,
execution with their ideas is just horrific, bro. I mean, it's just like I'm reading through it and I'm just like, and I'm enjoying it, but like they're like, it feels like they're like just it sounds bad. It feels like they're just masturbating to everyone and everything, and it's just is like endless. You're just like, oh my god.
no.
Um,
No, I mean, I also studied Germanistic, yeah, like German study, and I tell you, it's like when you study German and German academic writing is, oh boy, it's atrocious. And they're not all of it, of course, disclaimer, not all of it, yeah, but quite often it's very wordy, it's very up its own behind
yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
it's like a great thought sometimes articulated horrifically, and I think if you want to engage with the world and you want to engage people, you should try and your best and write in a style that people can understand. And I hope, I mean, I tried in the book to do that.
No,
Uh,
you're good. That's so fun. I didn't know that because I've actually read a lot of German secondary source literature or stuff written by Germans, and it's most of the time it's very, very like heavy. Very. I didn't know. I didn't know that that was a thing.
No, I think it is. It's in America. You learn principles of essay composition. You learn about things like end focus in the language. And how you get around end focus, and you learn about some of these things, and then you try it out yourself, and you get to level X of competence. And I think in German, at least for the longest time, I think it has turned around in the last 20 years or so, but that German academic tradition is like, who cares? Who cares if they understand it? It's like I am me and my little ivory tower and my esteemed colleagues. Yes, they will understand when I tell them about uh, the undifferentiation principle of the necrobiotic morality conundrum. I don't know. So it's like
Oh my god.
that's that's
Do you?
my that's my German mad scientist actually. So, but
Yeah, German imitating Germans. I love it, man.
uh,
Do you teach in German or do you teach in English?
watching American movies. That's how German scientists sound in America. Yeah, but once again, I'm imitating people. I teach both. I teach German and English.
Like, do you have like? Is that like a separate class? Is like, do you have a
Yes.
class where you only speak English? What
Yes,
class
I
is
have. I
that?
mean, when I have my English courses and I teach English. By the way, I got that advanced
There you
course.
go.
So I'm super looking forward to it, and I'm definitely going to force them to read Shakespeare,
Oh
even though
God.
I have to. But they're going to, and maybe I can sneak in the road. I hope I can do that.
Yeah, you can, man. Sneak it in.
I think I will. I think I will. So yeah, but and I have German classes too. So I have for German teachers that's a horrible combination because you have to correct a lot of writing, which destroys your brain after a while. But yeah, I do that in both German and in English.
Is that like a secondary? Are you like, cause like in America we have like Spanish class. Are you like, is that like a, so I assume that's like a second language class?
Yes. English is second language acquisition, basically those classes. We also have colleagues who teach French, Spanish, and so on at our
Yeah.
school where I'm at. But yeah, I'm doing the English part.
Wow. Do you teach like English one? Do you teach the basic stuff sometimes? Like,
I try to.
yeah, 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 yeah. That's cool.
It's I feel I'm more competent the older the students get. And
Yeah.
I'm sometimes like, should be, why can't I come up with any fun games for my fifth graders? You know, it's like, we can't always play vocabulary soccer on the wall.
You teach fifth graders?
Yeah, too. Yeah, I do.
That's
From
hard. Wow. Wow. That's
grade five to through all the way through grade 13. So
Jesus Christ. That's a crazy range, man. That's like,
yeah, yeah, but that's how secondary school works in Germany.
okay, cool.
But what was the original question? I think we were
Physics
talking
of
about
mortality. Yeah.
physics of mortality. Yes.
Sorry.
Okay, let me tell you about Maxwell's demon. Um, and Girard, and this is, this is like my nerdy brain connecting things that probably shouldn't be connected. But in Girard, yeah, we always have that idea of possession. Yeah, when you imitate a model, you're in a way possessed by him or her. And the Bible, when you have demoniacs and so on, yeah, you have people that are being possessed, like in The Exorcist or something. Um, we have to find out what, yeah, who the original model for Little Reagan was. But yeah, so possession. But then on the other hand, we have entropy. And information theory and so on. But information theory, let's leave that to the side for now. So you have that idea. Okay, entropy is increasing. Basically, the world tends towards, or an isolated system tends toward maximum disorder at some point, and in every process of exchange of energy or information. There's a certain loss involved, yeah, and that energy, which can neither be destroyed or created, just bound, yeah. Some of it always goes away and is lost in terms of heat. So there was, and so that was Rudolf Emanuel Clausius, fellow German, who yeah, formulated the second law of thermodynamics, and then a bit later, you have fellow German, or maybe Austrian, Hermann von Helmholtz, who said, okay, yeah, that technically that's going to lead us to the heat death of the universe. And McCarthy says we labor in a heat death of the soul and of the heart and of the soul. Yeah? So in Whales and Men, so which is wonderful. So because then we have a direct application of entropy to matters of, I don't know, ethics, the heart, love, whatever, and spirituality as well. But once again, let's leave that aside. So back to Helmholtz. So heat death of the universe, and then there's James Clerk Maxwell. Yeah, in England, not a fellow German, but a cool dude nonetheless. And he's like, yeah, no, I don't like that, because that means that at some point, yeah, at some point, all the free energy is going to be used up and has dissipated as heat in the universe, which is pretty cold. So we have a heat death. So I don't like that. So it should be possible, yeah, it should be possible to get around that. So he imagined this compartment of, yeah, or a canister or a compartment that's separated by a wall, filled with a gas, and that gas, yeah, you have molecules and they move at different speeds. And in between, now we put in a trap door and we appoint a little demon. And he thought of it as a valve. I think it was, who was it? Somebody else called him Maxwell's demon, and Maxwell didn't like that. But we appoint this little doorkeeper, and he lets through the fast molecules on the one side and the slow molecules on the other side. Thereby, we create a differential of heat. Yeah, so here it gets hotter, here it gets colder. So, and with that heat differential, we have not put in any energy. But what we can do now is we can put that to work once again because we have a heat differential. Wonderful, Maxwell's demon. So my idea, you find Maxwell's demon. I think you have it in Pynchon in a short story that's called Entropy. That's before Crying of Lot and some others. But I think that also works there because you have the big party, Meatball Mulligan's party in one story, and you have that artiste couple living in the other flat, so where there's not as much going on. But in Lester Ballard, yeah, he brings home this girlfriend, his girlfriend that he finds on the road. Yeah, he puts her in a nice dress, and she's a bit cold. Brackets frigid, yeah. So and he has to warm her up. So he has to store her in the one part of the house where it's cold, yeah, because we want to keep her fresh, yeah. But at the same time, it's not nice to make out with a cold body, so he has to bring her. He has to heat up the rest of the other part of the house. So once again, we have that idea. Okay, so in the one case, we have to heat up one chamber and we cool down the other, or the other is being cold. And Lester Ballard kind of works as this demoniac figure in between, yeah. And he also wants to, of course, engage in the sex. And my idea then was, okay, so if we have Maxwell's demon, Lester Ballard, who also works as a scapegoat, and when we put that into order, into this idea of order and disorder. When the demon, yeah, creates an order out of chaos, yeah, and that's basically the same thing that the sacrificial victim or the scapegoat does in Girard's theory, because it separates that chaotic state of the sacrificial crisis, and you go through that victim, and once you've gone through that process, you have order once again. So in a sense, the Girardian sacrificial victim works like Maxwell's demon. And it's funny because quite often that victim is described in demonic terms. So, and the thing about Maxwell's demon is it doesn't work. But yeah, in Girard it may work. So but there's so many wonderful parallels. It's really fun. Yeah. I'm probably coming across as totally crazy, but doesn't
No, no, no. I mean, no. I mean, no one's going to think that. I mean, that's like that was no. I mean, maybe. Hey, you're on my. People think I'm crazy though, so I mean, you're just welcome to the program, man.
Yes.
No, I mean, yeah, I mean that is. I mean, dude, you do honestly combine some. What are some of your other? I mean, just to go slightly off topic of McCarthy, what are some of your other like literary interests? Like, what are your other favorite authors? Like, where did you like? Obviously, you picked McCarthy. Why did you pick? I mean, just because you were inspired? Like, if it wasn't McCarthy, who would you have? Where would you have gone? Let's say McCarthy wasn't an option or didn't exist.
Oh. I mean, there have been some literary awakenings for me. So one of the first things, I think I wrote my bachelor's thesis about Kurt Vonnegut and his early novel Player Piano, which and Vonnegut is still close to my heart. My supervisor, once again, the great late Peter Frese, he wrote like a book that's like twice as big as mine on only on Kurt Vonnegut, and yeah, he was a wonderful humanist, very funny, and I think novels like Cat's Cradle or Slaughterhouse-Five are absolutely up there with the greats. And the other awakenings came very much when I went to the U.S. to study there. Wonderful time at St. Olaf College in Northfield, Minnesota. And yeah, so I discovered McCarthy there, along with some other nice ones. So Flannery O'Connor was a first for me there. So we read A Good Man Is Hard to Find, and we read Good Country People, and from there I also started discovering Flannery O'Connor. Um, we had in that same class, we also read, I think, Ian Banks, which was okay. Gordon Lish, who's, I mean, he edited a lot of. Do you know Gordon Lish?
No, I don't.
No, he edited a lot of Raymond Carver's short stories,
Nice.
and we read a novel called Dear Mr. Capote. It made me so insanely angry. Just the style was so unnerving. So that would never have been anything I would write about, but it made me really, really angry. Just for the way it drove me insane. But we also read. I also read The Sound and the Fury. That was another class, but that was my first discovering of Faulkner. So my first engagement with Faulkner, and it was like, bah, mind blown. So I absolutely loved that. So for me, I've always liked American literature a little bit more than the English side, even though there's another favorite is Samuel Beckett. Yeah, sure. Sorry, I
Yeah.
should have mentioned Beckett. Beckett is one of the one of my all time greats too. But yeah, so for me, Faulkner, McCarthy, Beckett, Vonnegut, Flannery O'Connor. So actually, a lot of the Southern writers, you would say, but yeah. And Beckett, of course, is totally different from McCarthy, but and all of those, but still, just yeah, just
So you
some.
studied so you studied like abroad in America?
Yeah,
How long were you here for?
just barely. Let me think. Was 1 year. So I mean, so for that, I was there for at least a semester. Was it two? Just a semester, I think. But it was one of the best in my life. So it was really good. I discovered a lot of things. And then after that, I went on an internship in Washington D.C. And I think I started reading McCarthy there after having discovered Child of God, which once again you totally underrate. But
What
a lot of people do. So.
let me get your rankings then. What's your let's hear your top 5 Cormac McCarthy novels.
I don't know. So it's super hard. So obviously, once again, shame on me, but I haven't read The Passenger yet and Stella Maris. And I wouldn't count the dramatic text, including The Sunset Limited, a novel in dramatic form, as a novel. So let's exclude those. So I could say tiers. I think I can do tier rankings, but I can't really
Okay.
I can't give you a definitive top 10. So, but I think S tier for me is Subtree, Blood Meridian, and The Crossing. So I think there we agree. Um, and then A tier is probably oh, Outer Dark is really good. It's like perfectly crafted. It's you can't leave anything out, can you? It's like it's so concise in a way. It has everything. So I admire it in a sense. It may you have a novel, you have a video where you say it may be his best novel, and I'm tempted to agree, but still A tier. Um, so horses probably A tier. So I think so. My heart says "Child of God" belongs in the A tier too, but
Yeah.
so my mind says I don't know, maybe not. But so I have less. I have studied it less, and I may be underrating it, but below that I would rank Cities of the Plain and No Country for Old Men. Have I forgotten anyone? Oh, The
The
Road.
Road
The
and
Road
The
is
Orchard
the A
Keeper.
tier too. So to me at least. I mean, I know. It's like you could say it's a bit schmaltzy after all of it, and yeah, the movie with the Nick Cave score doesn't really help it maybe all that much. By the way, I think the score is beautiful on its own. I just think it shouldn't be there in the film.
I
Uh,
never had thought of that. I never thought that until Patrick O'Connor told me that. I was just like, "Oh,
yeah, I
that makes
think yeah,
sense. Why would I have that? Why would there be a score to an apocalyptic novel or movie? Yeah.
yeah.
Does it make sense?"
It doesn't, and it's like strings, and it's. I like to listen to it on its own, but I think the movie would be better if it weren't there. Yeah. So the road for me is just really important as this also as a theoretical capstone. in a sense, you know. So I think that brings something new because it's this apotheosis of love. You know, it's like, yeah, that's, yes, you can say that's trite, you can say that's cliche, yes, yes, all of it, but it's the simplicity. Against all of this violence, you have a simple message, beautifully expressed. I think, at least the way I read it, you know.
Yeah, of course, McCarthy thought it was I mean, he knew it. He wrote this short novel, like, he knew what it was gonna but that he but he still did it. He understood how powerful it was. Do you think the guy that wrote Blood Meridian, like, he knew it wasn't, like, some complicated, crazy thing, but, like, that's the point. It's not
Yeah,
supposed to be.
100%. I agree with you, and it's yeah, I it can't be. It has to be simple. It has to be. You know, it can't be this super complicated solution to society's woes that nobody can actually put into action, or only a super elite few may be able to, or at least, yeah, once again, at least the way I read it. But it has to be simple, and the beauty is in its simplicity. So yeah, so I think to me the bottom tier would be, to come back to that, would be No Country, even though it adds things to the movie, that you wouldn't have otherwise, and it's interesting in its own right, and Cities of the Plain. But that may be because I'm underrating it. Yeah, that's for me those that we have there. I like.
And where would The Orchard Keeper, lower tier?
Oh, damn it! I forgot it. Forgot about the Orchard Keeper. Oh, it's hard to say. Hard to say. It's probably somewhere between A and B to me. And once again, I would totally accept every other ranking. It's like, yeah. Um, but have you heard of people who put Satri at the bottom?
Yeah, 100%. People don't like it, you know? My shout out my sister, she's read most Cormac McCarthy novels, she just didn't really like it, you know? Just didn't, you know? I don't know, maybe it's just because maybe it's just a man thing, he's just the sad boy wandering, you know? Maybe that's just
Maybe.
that whole thing. She's just like, "What's like, it's just a bunch of fucking idiots just doing dumb shit. Like, it's beautiful writing. It's just like not, you know." And I was like, "Yeah, but look at this." Like,
But once again, beautiful ideas coming from chaos. All
yeah,
souls are one and all souls lonely. Yeah, okay, sad boy shit. But once again, that's the panentheism sin. We're like, maybe at some bottom, like we're one soul. We're God. All of us are God, you know, together. But and we're literally omniscient because we know everything that we know, and we're omnipotent because we can do everything that we can do. And guess what? We can do more together. If you but okay. And but yeah, so I'm geeking off again.
yeah.
And I'm not sure
That's
that McCarthy sees it all that positive as I would, in my best moments. But yeah, I think he was, much more pessimist. But I don't know. I'm just inventing that positive person because I have to go back to school and be at the front line of fighting
yeah.
against.
You can't be if you're negative in there, man. They'll smell blood, man. They're gonna, you know. You don't want to. Okay, so let me end with this. What do you think? Speaking of John Hillcoat, Nick Cave, what do you think of this Blood Meridian adaptation? What are your thoughts? Do you think they should Nick Cave do the score? Should he put some nice music? Should he put a viola in the back as the Comanches are rolling up on him?
No, well, definitely not there. No. So, I mean, I think John Hillcoat has directed a competent movie in The Road and a great movie. Have you watched, The Proposition?
Sorry, you cut out. Can you
The
say that again?
Australian. Oh, have you watched, Hillcoat's The Proposition?
Oh, of course. Yeah, that's a. But and I'll just share my thoughts really fast about that.
Yeah.
It's I don't I think the movie's good. Yeah, of course. Great movie. But, I feel like this so what I always say is, has he transcended that style? I've seen a lot of his stuff between. I don't think like The Road is an artistic. revolution on his end. I've seen some of his other films and shows between then. And so I'm like, okay, so we have this film that he did 20 years ago, and we're using that as as this that he can do it again. But Blood Meridian, I think, is a much bigger ask than the Proposition. The Proposition didn't have any major battle scenes, didn't have like these things going on, didn't have these ephemeral characters like it kind of did with the brother or whoever it was. But not so much. And then it also was filmed in the high noon, very bright Australian style, and like I don't feel like that's the look for this. Obviously, he knows how to do different shades. The road was, very dark. But, I'm like, does he? And I think I view Blood Meridian as a very psychedelic movie or, psychedelic. And, I'm imagining something like Apocalypse Now. That's more of the vibe, maybe not like that. And I'm like, is the Proposition, like, it does that transfer over? I don't know. So, yes, I've seen it.
Yeah. I share your skepticism. So my dream would be somebody like Francis Ford Coppola when he directed Apocalypse Now, or maybe Hodorowski directing.
Dude,
Uh,
imagine, dude. It'd be naked Judge Holden.
you need something like that. And who would you cast as Judge Holden? I'm always thinking John Goodman. I'm not sure if he's too old, but
John Goodman,
just
imagine.
shave him, and he has that deep voice. It's like,
They can't do it. I mean, they already did this, but Skarsgård, Bill Skarsgård from Dune, but he already did that. He's literally this same look. They can't bring the Baron Harkonnen or whatever
yeah,
is the same. He's literally the same character though, so they couldn't bring back him. I think if they had gotten him, like he could have done it pretty well. Seeing him play a very similar character, he could have probably done a decent job.
and I think for the camera, I think you need somebody like Roger Deakins, for the imagery, or you need God, what's in Lubieski? I think he was there for The Revenant. It's like for that movie, which is also fairly close to McCarthy Western, um, with some caveats. But I think you need somebody. The cinematography needs to be off the wall, and it needs to be a
Yeah,
bit crazy. And I
yeah,
think, with putting the violence on screen, sometimes you can get away with maybe implying some of the worst things. Yeah, if you're thinking about bashing babies against the rocks so that the blood bursts out the fontanelle, and horrific things like that. So maybe just do that with shadow, like show that in some indirect way. But it needs to be, it needs to be violent, and it needs to be hyper violent, and it needs to be horrific, and it needs to be in parts funny. I came here for my health. Yeah. It's,
Jesus.
so it's a tall order. It's a tall order, and I hope that they're not going to fumble this.
Well, it sucks because if they fumble it, I'm like, you can have it, but they fumbled so many. They fumbled, the counselor was all right. That was McCarthy's screenplay. Maybe that was lacking. That was pretty good, but All the Pretty Horses was fumbled. The Road, I would say, was kind of fumbled. No Country for Old Men was obviously pretty good or great, whatever you want to call it. But I'm like, dude, if they fumble this, then we have to wait another 10 years, 15 years to get another adaptation. And none are as, apparently though, there's a guy, and I forget his name, but he is going to adapt The Passenger in Stella Maris. He is like
Huh?
committed. He's like a big name, and he actually just released a movie, and he put a quote from The Passenger in there, like a character, like said, like didn't actually quote McCarthy, but I guess just kind of stole a line or something. So, and he said that he wants to do it. So, like that's crazy. A TV
Do
show,
you know who
which
that
we,
is, or what he directed?
um,
Because I haven't heard of it.
it is his name is this him? I think is his name Kelly Blatz, maybe?
Huh? Okay, I don't think I heard of this gentleman.
Yeah, I think that's him, or I'll have to, yeah. Yeah, anyway, I'd have to let you know. I don't know. Someone's been keen. One of my friends or fellow McCarthy renegades has been telling me all this. So
So I'm looking forward to it. What did you think of the James Franco adaptation of
Oh,
Childhood?
yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, speaking it was alright. It wasn't great. I mean, it was could have been better, but, dude, the Sound and the Fury dude, I mean, dude,
I
he didn't do this.
haven't watched it. I have, yeah,
He
didn't watch
well,
it.
he did As I Lay Dying. So he's just done 3 films. He did As I Lay Dying. He did this one called Zeroville that, a book I love by a guy named Steve Erickson. He ruined that one. He ruined As I Lay Dying, and then he really didn't do Child of God justice. I mean, what did you think of it?
I mean, it's been a while, and I don't get. I mean, why did he stop? The ending is missing. It's like completely missing. Where is it? Why? It was okay for that time. So I thought that God, well, Scott. What was the actor's, the main actor's name? Scott. I don't remember.
Scott
Um,
Hayes.
Scott Hayes. I thought he did a good job.
Yeah.
And I thought that it was graphic enough in some sense. You know, the first begins with him taking a dump.
Yeah.
So that was. I mean, it had some good intuitions, but I think like it probably needed more dedication. Or I don't know.
James Franco just isn't he I mean, what did he get famous for? Pineapple Express? Like, like him, deciding that he's gonna do the, avant-garde literary films at his level. I mean, did you see the Blood Meridian test footage?
Yeah, I did.
It looked terrible. I mean, thank God. Imagine if he got that.
Yeah, you're right. So it's that's one that's one bullet dodged.
Yeah, one of my favorite McCarthy quotes is James Franco called him and he's like, "Why'd you write this?" And he's like, "Some dumb reason." I don't know.
I don't know, James. Probably some dumb reason. It's yeah, it's wonderful. Um,
Well, Marcus, you got anything to add? You got anything to say to the people? Here you are. It was a great podcast. Holy, I mean, we went everywhere. I mean, so
I,
much.
we went way over time. So whenever, yeah, how do I have anything to say? Now it's like you come up with something intelligent.
No, no, you don't have to. You don't have to say anything to the people.
Um, don't take this rambling stuff and yeah, I think the book is. I don't know who has written that book exactly. That has been published under my name, but that guy is probably a bit more intelligible than I have been through this whole thing. And I'm sorry that it's super expensive.
Well, and let me give credit to you and credit to the other Marcus that it's a lot to discern. Like you go deep, and so obviously, you're speaking in retrospect. As you were telling me, you wrote this, 8 years ago or something, and so speaking now about all of that in detail, it's a lot. Like, and you've never really done podcasting before. Like, it's hard to talk about this stuff. Um, because yeah, anyway, because if we put that book on audiobook, it would be 10 plus hours. So
Yeah,
it's a lot to explain.
yeah. So I don't know if you. I'm super happy if you can read it at some point. You don't have to buy it. I don't know. Let your university library or whatever get it for you if you want to. If you want to do me some good. I don't actually know whether I'll get paid for this. I have no idea. It really doesn't matter. I'm happy that the book is out. I'm sort of happy with it, and I hope that yeah. I hope it's intelligible. Don't take my word for the gospel or anything. So it's just one guy's take, and there are a lot of wonderful scholars, many of whom I quote in the book, that are absolutely worth reading. And McCarthy is like Dostoevsky or Melville or Faulkner, or when we go to the German side, Goethe or Thomas Mann or Rilke. We should talk about Rilke at some point.
Yeah,
He's
yeah. Do you like them?
yeah, of course.
Oh, okay,
You
okay, cool.
know,
I don't know.
you have good taste. You have good taste in Uh, Rilke is probably the person who is most competent in making the German language fit for poetry. It's yeah. But McCarthy is inexhaustible, I think, and um, I have put forth my argument for how to read him, but there are so many wonderful, valid ways. I could never have written a book like Diane Luce has, or Rick Wallach has, or Dave Holloway has, and many of, or Patrick O'Connor has. And everybody has their own things to bring to it. And by the way, also outside academia, Ian is spitting fire every week, um, and it's that's what great art is. It's inexhaustible, and yeah, you can take something from it, and we're just that's Frank Kermode. Yeah, so literature tells us how we read, how to understand the world, and this is just one way to try and make clear how we read literature, or make sense of the ways that literature makes sense of the world.
There we go. And I know you're being humble there, but I would just say that even if we remove Girard, even if we remove all of that, like your exploration of the scapegoat, which could be removed from Girard, just scapegoating doubles the mythical implications, the biblical implications of just within McCarthy's work. Just that stuff alone is worth the price of admission for your book, and just in general. And you hold your own and do more, and go different places than I've ever seen. I basically have read everything. So, yeah, thank you to you, Markus, for writing it. Thank you for all of you guys out there who are listening, supporting. Yeah, and we'll see you guys soon. Peace out, everybody.